A human mechanic tangled with the alien warlord's daughter. Trouble brews, but things aren't always what they look like. Subscribe now for the wild ride ahead. Ethan Hawke. Malone stumbled into his quarters, every muscle screaming after an 18-hour shift wrestling the reactors on Zithra 9. Sweat soaked his black tank top, his brown hair a tangled mess from running greasy hands through it all day. The air stank of burnt metal and recycled oxygen, a scent only a space station grunt could stomach. He didn't bother kicking off his boots, just collapsed onto the thin mattress, the harsh overhead lights buzzing like a swarm of angry wasps. Too tired to care, too tired to tell the system to dim them. Sleep slammed into him like a freight hauler, dragging him back to Texas, cold beer in hand, wind ripping through the plains, the sun bleeding gold across the sky. Then the mattress dipped. His eyes snapped open, adrenaline surging through his veins like a jumpstart to a busted engine. Something, or someone, was on his bed. Survival instincts flared, sharpened from years dodging pirates and rogue machinery. He bolted upright, heart hammering, and nearly choked on his own spit. Hovering over him was the wildest sight he'd ever laid eyes on. A woman, alien, no doubt, her skin a deep, glowing crimson, like molten lava under starlight. Long black hair spilled down her shoulders, shimmering like spilled oil in the cabin's glare. Her eyes, bright gold with flecks of amber, sparkled with a mischief that made his gut twist. She wore a tight, black bodysuit that clung to every curve, the neckline diving low to reveal smooth red skin across her chest, leaving her arms and long legs bare. The outfit screamed trouble, and hell, it looked good doing it. "You snore like a dying thruster," she whispered, her voice smooth and melodic, with an accent that turned galactic common into something dangerously exotic. Her lips curved into a smirk, full and tempting, as she leaned closer. A scent hit him, smoke and spice, sharp and wild, curling into his nostrils like a taunt. Ethan's brain scrambled to catch up. He'd seen Zynari before, blue-skinned, green-skinned, all humanoid. But this crimson-skinned firecracker? She was something else entirely. "Who the hell are you?" he rasped, voice rough from sleep and shock. "And how'd you get in here?" Her smirk widened, flashing sharp canines that gleamed like polished steel. "I'm Zara. And your security? More decoration than defense." She tilted her head, hair sliding over one shoulder, her eyes raking over him like he was a puzzle she'd already cracked. He opened his mouth to argue, maybe toss her out, but the door hissed open with a hydraulic whine. 4 Zynari guards burst in, each one built like a bulldozer, their grayish-blue skin rippling with muscle under tight uniforms. Plasma rifles snapped up, barrels locked on him. "Freeze!" the lead guard barked, his voice a low growl. His golden eyes widened, taking in the scene, Ethan half-naked in his boxer briefs, and this Zara chick perched on his bed like she owned the damn place. "Oh, crap," Ethan muttered, yanking the thin blanket over his chest. His mind raced. 18 hours fixing reactors, and now this? Caught with some alien dame in his room? This wasn't in the contract. Zara, though, didn't flinch. She straightened up, still sitting on the edge of his bed, and fixed the guards with a look of mild annoyance. "You're interrupting a private moment," she said coolly, crossing her legs like she was at a bar, not staring down 4 armed goons. "Have some manners." The lead guard's face darkened, his skin shifting to a deeper blue, a Zynari tell for anger. Ethan knew from experience. "Miss Zara," he said, stepping forward, "Warlord Korrath has turned the station upside down looking for you. And now we find you here with him." The way he spat him made it clear what he thought of Ethan, a filthy human wrench monkey, way out of his depth. Ethan's stomach dropped. Korrath, the Zynari warlord who ran Zithra 9 like his personal kingdom. The guy who could snap Ethan's contract or his neck with a flick of his wrist. He shot a glance at Zara, who winked at him like this was all a game. "Surprise," she purred, her tone dripping with amusement. "Both of you move," the guard snapped, gesturing with his rifle. "Warlord wants you now." Ethan groaned, swinging his legs off the bed. "Can I at least put some pants on?" he asked, already knowing the answer wouldn't be friendly. 30 seconds, the guard grunted, not lowering his weapon. Ethan scrambled into his work pants, the fabric stiff with grime, and yanked on a crumpled shirt. Zara watched him the whole time, her golden eyes glinting with interest, like he was putting on a private show. "Your boss is going to kill me," he hissed at her, fumbling with his bootlaces. She laughed, a musical sound that bounced around the tiny cabin. "Probably," she agreed, hopping off the bed with a grace that made his clumsy scramble look pathetic. "But don't worry. Sometimes things aren't what they seem." The guards marched them through the station's corridors, their boots clanging on the metal floors. Ethan felt every pair of eyes, human mechanics, Zynari techs, even a few scaly Dravix laborers, tracking them as they passed. Whispers buzzed like static. By morning, the whole damn station would know the human grease monkey got caught with the Warlord's daughter. Perfect. Just perfect. They reached the command deck, a sleek chamber of polished steel and glowing consoles. Warlord Korrath wasn't what Ethan expected. No frail desk jockey here. This guy was a titan. 8 feet tall, broad as a shuttle, his skin a deep midnight blue that seemed to swallow the light. Silver tattoos snaked across his face and neck, marking him as old, powerful, and not someone you messed with. His uniform was sharp, tailored to his massive frame, and his golden eyes pinned Ethan like a bug under a lens. "So," Korrath's voice rolled out, deep and smooth despite its edge, "you're Malone, the human who patched the reactor leak last cycle. Save half my crew." Ethan blinked, thrown off. Yes, sir," he managed, standing straighter despite his rumpled clothes and sleep-deprived haze. He'd expected a death threat, not a pat on the back. Korrath circled his desk, each step deliberate, his boots echoing like hammer strikes. "Good record. Smart. Tough. Which makes this," he gestured at Ethan and Zara, "disappointing." "Sir, I can explain." Ethan started, but Zara cut him off, lounging in a chair like she was at a picnic. "He wasn't doing anything," she said, examining her nails, which shimmered like liquid metal. "I broke in. He was asleep. Snoring, actually, loudly." Korrath's eyes narrowed, his skin rippling with darker streaks. Anger, or maybe frustration. "Silence, Zara. This is the 3rd stunt this month." He turned back to Ethan. "4th, if you count the shuttle pilot mess she forgot to mention." Ethan's jaw tightened. Shuttle pilot? What kind of chaos had he stepped into? Zara smirked at him, unapologetic, and damn if that didn't make his pulse jump. "Leave us," Korrath ordered the guards. The door sealed with a hiss, locking them in with the warlord's towering presence. He sank into his chair, looking suddenly weary. "Malone, I apologize for my daughter. She's difficult." "Difficult's one way to put it," Ethan muttered, then clamped his mouth shut. "Too late." Korrath raised an eyebrow, but didn't snap his head off, so maybe that was a win. "Daddy thinks I picked bad company to annoy him," Zara said, stretching in her chair. Her bodysuit shifted, showing more crimson skin, and Ethan had to force his eyes back to Korrath. She caught his glance, her smirk growing. "I think I just have good taste." Korrath ignored her. "Malone, she's betrothed to Tarek, son of Counselor Vrax. A political match. But Zara, she enjoys making my life harder." "Betrothed?" Ethan shot her a look. "You didn't mention that part." She rolled her eyes. "It's boring Zynari nonsense. Marry for power, not passion." Her gaze lingered on him, hot and deliberate, and Ethan felt the room shrink. Korrath leaned forward. "I have a job for you, Malone. She's taken a shine to humans, your grit, your attitude. In 2 weeks, Tarek and Vrax arrive to seal the betrothal. Until then, I need her out of trouble. Etans gut twistet." "Sir, with respect, I'm a mechanic, not a babysitter." "I'm promoting you," Korrath said flatly. "Deck officer. Better pay, better quarters. Your job? Keep her occupied. No scandals. No headlines." Zara laughed, the sound ringing off the walls. "Oh, this is rich. You're making him my keeper." "My liaison," Korrath corrected. "He'll stick with you, entertain you, and make sure you don't burn this station down." Ethan's mind spun. A promotion? Out of nowhere, he glanced at Zara, who was watching him like a cat with a new toy. "And if I say no?" You go back to your wrench, Korrath said, shrugging. No hard feelings. I don't punish men for her games. I'll do it, Ethan said, surprising himself. The words slipped out before he could overthink it. More credits, a better gig, and maybe a chance to figure out what the hell was happening. Korrath nodded. Good. Your new quarters are ready by morning. And Malone, don't let her drag you into chaos. Too late for that, Ethan muttered as they left the office. Zara fell into step beside him, her arm brushing his, sending a jolt through him he couldn't ignore. So, my new handler, she purred, her voice low and teasing. What's our first move? He stopped, turned to face her. First, ground rules. I'm not your toy, and I'm not here to piss off your dad. Her eyes lit up, delighted. Oh, I like you, Hawk. Most guys, human or Zynari, trip over themselves for me by now. I'm not most guys, he shot back, holding her gaze. Clearly, she said, her fingers brushing his arm, light as a spark. That's why this'll be fun. As they headed for the deck lifts, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling he'd just signed up for more than a babysitting gig. The way she moved, the way she looked at him, it wasn't just trouble. She was a loaded cannon, and he was standing right in the line of fire. Ethan Hawk. Malone stepped out of the deck lift, the metallic clang of the doors snapping shut behind him like a judge's gavel. His new quarters were 2 levels up from the grease-stained maintenance bay he'd called home for 3 years, and the air here didn't reek of oil and despair. Progress, sure, but the crimson-skinned shadow trailing him made it feel less like a win and more like a sentence. Zara matched his stride, her boots clicking on the polished floor, her presence a heat wave he couldn't shake. That promotion to deck officer was starting to feel like a deal with the devil, except this devil had golden eyes and a smirk that could melt steel. Nice upgrade, she said, surveying the corridor with a lazy sweep of her gaze. The walls gleamed, lined with viewports showing Zithara 9's jagged asteroid fields spinning in the void. Still not as good as my suite, though. How about a plasma fountain? Ethan snorted, shoving his hands into his pockets. Yeah, well, I'll settle for a bed that doesn't feel like a slab of concrete. And maybe some peace. He shot her a sidelong glance, which, with you around, seems unlikely. Her laugh rang out, sharp and musical, bouncing off the steel walls. Peace is overrated, Hawk. You humans are so cute when you pretend you want it. She stepped closer, her arm brushing his again, and that damn spark jolted through him like a live wire. He gritted his teeth, forcing his eyes forward. Ground rules, he'd said. He wasn't her toy. So why did his pulse keep forgetting that? They reached his new quarters, the door sliding open with a soft hiss. The space was triple the size of his old bunk, actual furniture instead of fold-down cot, a viewport stretching across one wall, and a food synth unit that didn't look like it had poisoned him. Ethan let out a low whistle. Okay, Korrath wasn't kidding about the perks. Zara glided past him, her bodysuit catching the light, accentuating the curve of her hips as she inspected the room. It'll do, she said, flopping onto the couch with a dramatic sprawl. Her crimson skin glowed against the dark fabric, like embers on ash. So, handler, what's the plan? Lock me in here? Bore me to death with human maintenance manuals? Ethan crossed his arms, leaning against the wall. Plan's simple. You stay out of trouble, I keep my head attached to my shoulders. Your dad's counting on me, and I'm not screwing this up for a paycheck. She propped herself up on one elbow, golden eyes narrowing. You're no fun. I picked you because you're supposed to be interesting. Gritty. Human. She dragged out the last word, her voice dipping low, teasing. Don't tell me you're just another rule follower. I'm not here to entertain you, he shot back, though her tone was digging under his skin. I fix reactors, not princesses. Princess. She sat up, her smirk turning wicked. I could snap you in half, Hawk. Want to test that? She flexed her fingers, nails glinting like tiny blades, and for a second he believed her. Zynari were strong, stronger than humans by a mile, and she moved like she knew it. He held her gaze, refusing to blink. Try it. I've wrestled bigger machines than you, and I'm still standing. Her laugh came again, softer this time, but it didn't ease the tension crackling between them. Oh, I like that. Keep talking tough. It's adorable. Ethan opened his mouth to fire back, but his calm unit chirped, cutting through the standoff. Malone, report to Reactor Bay 3. A gruff voice crackled. Pressure spike. Your mess to clean up, deck officer. Great, he muttered, grabbing his toolkit from the corner. Duty calls. You coming, or are you going to sit there looking pretty? Zara sprang up, all fluid motion, and fell in a step beside him. Wouldn't miss it. I want to see the famous hawk in action. The reactor bay was a maze of pipes and humming machinery, the air thick with heat and the tang of ionized metal. Ethan crouched by a control panel, toolkit open, his hands moving fast over the valves. A pressure spike this late meant someone had screwed up or something was about to blow. He didn't have time for games, but Zara hovered nearby, watching him like a hawk herself. You're good at this, she said, leaning against the console, her voice cutting through the drone of the reactor. Quick hands. Steady. Very human. Comes with the territory, he grunted, twisting a wrench. You Zynari might have fancy tech, but we humans keep it running. She stepped closer, her shadow falling over him. Maybe that's why I like you. You don't just obey. You do. Her tone shifted, softer, almost curious, and when he glanced up, she was right there, too close. Her crimson skin seemed to pulse with the reactor's glow, her bodysuit hugging her tight enough to make his throat dry. He stood, wiping sweat from his brow, and reached for a loose coupling above her. His arm brushed her side, his fingers grazing the taut curve of her waist as he tightened the bolt. His arm brushed her side, his fingers grazing the taut curve of her waist as he tightened the bolt. She didn't move, just tilted her head, her breath warm against his neck. Careful, Hawk, she murmured, her voice a low hum. You're playing with fire. His hand froze mid-twist, heat flooding his chest. Not from the reactor, but from her. Her skin was hot under his touch, smoother than he'd expected, like polished stone warmed by a flame. His pulse kicked up, and for a dumb second, he wondered what had happened if he didn't pull away. Then the console beeped, a shrill warning, and he yanked his hand back, swearing under his breath. Focus, Malone, he muttered, stepping away as the pressure reading stabilized. Zara smirked, unfazed. Close call. You're welcome for the distraction. Distraction's gonna get me killed, he said, but his voice came out rougher than he meant. She was a problem, a walking, talking, crimson skin problem, and he was starting to like it. Before he could figure out what to say next, the bay doors slid open with a clang. A figure stepped in, tall, lean, Zynari, his skin a pale green that shimmered like wet jade. Silver markings traced his jaw, and his golden eyes locked on Ethan with a coldness that could freeze a star. He wore a sleek uniform, all sharp angles, and carried himself like he owned the damn galaxy. Tarek, Zara said, her tone flat, all mischief gone. She straightened, crossing her arms. Ethan's gut tightened. The betrothed. Perfect timing. Tarek ignored her, his gaze drilling into Ethan. So, you're the human, he said, his voice smooth as a blade. Korrath's new pet. I hear you've been keeping my fiancée company. She keeps herself company just fine, Ethan replied, keeping his tone even. I'm just the guy with the wrench. Tarek's lips twitched, but it wasn't a smile. A wrench won't help you here, human. This station's future is mine to shape. And Zara, he glanced at her, possessive and sharp. She's part of that. Zara snorted. I'm not anyone's part, Tarek, least of all yours. He stepped closer, looming over Ethan, his presence heavy. Enjoy your little promotion, Malone. It won't last. Once my father and I take control, humans like you will be back where you belong, scraping the bottom. Ethan didn't flinch, meeting Tarek's stare head-on. Funny, I've heard that before. Yet here I am. Tarek's eyes narrowed, a flicker of something dangerous passing through them. We'll see. He turned to Zara. Your father can't protect you forever. This game ends soon. He stalked out, the doors slamming shut behind him. Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Charming guy, he muttered, turning to Zara. Your fiancé's a real catch. She didn't laugh this time. Her golden eyes were hard, fixed on the door. He's not my fiancé. He's a leash I never agreed to wear. She looked at Ethan, her expression shifting, less playful, more serious. Tarek's not just Hawk. He's planning something. Something big. Ethan wiped his hands on his pants, the weight of her words sinking in. Like what? I don't know yet, she said, stepping closer, her voice low. But if he's here early, it's not for the wedding. It's for the station. The reactor hummed behind them, steady now, but Ethan felt a different kind of pressure building. Zara wasn't just a troublemaker. She was a spark, and Tarek was the match. Whatever was coming, he was stuck right in the middle, and it was starting to look a lot less like a babysitting gig and a lot more like a war. Ethan Hawke, Malone stood in the reactor bay, the hum of machinery filling the silence Tarek had left behind. His hands were still greasy from the pressure fix, but his mind was stuck on Zara's words. He's planning something big. The way she'd said it, no smirk, no tease, made his gut churn worse than a bad batch of synth beer. He glanced at her, leaning against the console, her crimson skin catching the dim light like a warning flare. Those golden eyes were locked on the door Tarek had stormed through, and for once, she didn't look like she was playing a game. All right, Ethan said, wiping his hands on his pants. Spill it. What's your boyfriend up to? Zara's head snapped toward him, her glare sharp enough to cut steel. He's not my boyfriend, Hawk. He's a power-hungry jackass with a grudge. She pushed off the console, pacing like a caged animal. Tarek and his father, Vrax, they've been pushing to restructure Zither 9. More Zynari control. Less you. Less me. Ethan raised an eyebrow, tossing his wrench back into the toolkit. What? Humans cramp their style. Something like that, she said, stopping mid-step. They think your kind are tools, good for labor, bad for power. Tarek's early arrival? It's not for me. It's for this. She gestured at the reactor bay, the heart of the station's energy grid. Control this, and you control everything. Ethan frowned, the pieces clicking together like a misaligned gear finally slotting into place. So he's not just here to glare at me and flex his fancy uniform. He's got a move planned. Exactly. Zara's voice dropped, urgent. And if I know him, it's already in motion. He rubbed the back of his neck, the weight of it sinking in. Great. I go from fixing pipes to playing detective with the Warlord's daughter. This gig keeps getting better. Her lips twitched, a ghost of her usual smirk. You're tougher than you look, Hawk. I like that. Now, help me figure this out before he blows us all to scrap. Ethan sighed, but there was no dodging it. If Tarek was rigging something, the reactor bay was the obvious target, too vital, too volatile. He grabbed a scanner from his kit and started sweeping the control panel, the device's blue light flickering over the tangle of wires and conduits. Zara hovered close, her spice smoke scent mixing with the metallic tang of the bay. For once, she wasn't taunting him, just watching, tense and focused. Anything? She asked after a minute, her voice tight. Not yet, he muttered, adjusting the scanner. But if he's smart, he'd hide it deep, somewhere I'd only catch if it's too late. The reading spiked near a secondary power relay, a faint anomaly blinking red on the screen. Wait, got something. He knelt, popping open the relay panel. Inside was a mess of circuits, but one stood out, a sleek silver device wired into the grid, its edges too clean, too new. Not station standard. Well, hello there, he said, leaning closer. This ain't ours. Zara crouched beside him, her shoulder brushing his. What is it? Looks like a surge trigger, he said, tracing the wiring with his finger. Small but nasty. Overloads the system, fries the safeties. Could take out this whole bay and half the station with it. Her golden eyes widened, a rare crack in her cool facade. Tarek's work. He's done this before. Sabotage dressed up as accidents. Can you stop it? Ethan grinned, despite the sweat beading on his forehead. Lady, I've patched reactors mid-meltdown with duct tape and curses. This I can handle. He grabbed a pair of pliers, diving into the tangle. Keep an eye out. If your fiancé's goons show up, I'd rather not get a plasma bolt in the back. He's not. Zara started, then stopped, shaking her head. Fine. I'll watch. You fix. They fell into a rhythm. Ethan working the wires, Zara scanning the bay's entrance. Her presence was steady now, less chaotic, and he caught himself noticing it. The way she moved, all predator grace, her crimson skin practically glowing in the shadows. He shook it off, focusing on the trigger. One wrong snip, and they'd be toast. Humans are weird, she said suddenly, breaking the silence. You dive into danger like it's nothing. Zynari calculate risks. You just act. It's called guts, he said, clipping a wire. The trigger beeped but didn't blow. Good sign. Keeps us alive when the odds suck. She hummed, a soft sound that sent a shiver down his spine. I'm starting to see why I picked you. He glanced at her, caught off guard. Picked me? Thought this was your dad's idea. Korrath gave you the job, she said, her voice low, almost conspiratorial. I gave him a nudge. Saw you in the logs. Human saves crew from reactor leak. Figured you'd be more fun than the last guy. Ethan snorted. Flattered. Also terrified. You should be, she said, but there was a warmth in it, a flicker of something real. Her hand brushed his as she leaned closer to see the trigger, and he froze for half a heartbeat. Her fingers were warm, firm, lingering just long enough to make his chest tighten. Then she pulled back, casual as ever, leaving him wondering if he'd imagined it. Focus, Hawk, she teased, echoing his earlier mutter. No exploding on my watch. He grunted, turning back to the device. Yeah, almost there. He snipped the last wire, and the trigger's light winked out. Dead. Got it. We're safe for now. Zara exhaled, a rare sound of relief. Nice work. Maybe you're more than just a wrench. High praise, he said, standing and wiping his hands. So what's Tarek's next? The words died in his throat as a low rumble shook the bay. The floor vibrated, a deep groan rising from the machinery. Ethan spun to the main reactor console, readings spiking, red lights flashing like a damn fireworks show. What the hell? Zara grabbed his arm, her grip iron tight. That wasn't the only one, was it? He yanked the scanner up, sweeping the core. Another anomaly, bigger, buried deeper. Son of a... There's a second trigger. Primary grid. Tarek didn't mess around. The rumble grew, a pipe overhead hissing steam. Ethan's mind raced. 2 minutes, maybe 3, before the whole thing blew. I can't disarm it from here, he said, already moving. Gotta get to the core, manually. You'll get fried, Zara snapped, following him as he sprinted toward the reactor's access hatch. Let me. No time, he shouted, shoving the hatch open. Heat blasted his face, the core's glow painting the bay in angry orange. Stay back. Warn the crew if I screw this up. Hawk, she started, but he was already climbing down the maintenance ladder, toolkit slung over his shoulder. The air burned his lungs, the roar of the reactor drowning out everything. He hit the platform, sweat stinging his eyes, and spotted it. A pulsing silver box wired into the core's fuel line. Bigger than the first, meaner, countdown lights ticking fast. Tarek, you bastard, he thought, ripping open his kit. His hands moved on autopilot, pliers, cutter, sheer stubbornness. Humans didn't have Zynari strength or tech, but they had this, the dumb, reckless will to keep going. He yanked a wire, sparks flying, and the countdown froze, 3 seconds left. He let out a shaky laugh. Close enough. Then the world exploded. A blast tore through the bay, not from the core, but from above, pipes rupturing, shrapnel raining down. Ethan dove for cover, slamming into the platform as the station shook. Alarms screamed, lights flickering, and through the chaos, he heard Zara yelling his name. Hawk, get up. He staggered to his feet, ears ringing, blood trickling from a cut on his brow. The core was intact, his fix had held, but something else had blown. Tarek's plan wasn't done yet. Zara appeared at the hatch, her crimson face streaked with soot, eyes wild. You alive? Barely, he croaked, climbing back up. What hit us? She pulled him onto the bay floor, her hands steady on his arms. Auxiliary line. Another trap. He's playing dirty. Ethan wiped blood from his face. The bay is smoking wreck around them. Tarek wasn't just after control. He was willing to burn the whole station down to get it. And now, with Zara's grip lingering on him, her breath close enough to feel, Ethan knew they were in deeper than he'd ever signed up for. Ethan Hawk, Malone coughed, the acrid smoke from the ruptured auxiliary line clawing at his lungs. The reactor bay was a war zone. Twisted pipes hissed steam, sparks rained from shattered consoles, and the floor trembled like Zithara. 9 was about to crack open. Blood stung his eyes from the cut on his brow, but he barely felt it. Zara's hands were still on his arms, her crimson skin smudged with soot, her golden eyes blazing through the chaos. That explosion wasn't an accident. Tarek had rigged more than one trap, and the main reactor was still screaming warnings like a banshee on a bender. "We've got minutes," Ethan said, voice hoarse as he yanked his scanner from the floor. The readings were a nightmare. Core pressure spiking, secondary systems failing. Another surge triggers live. If it blows, we're all space dust. Zara's grip tightened, her nails digging into his skin. "Where?" "Core chamber," he said, pointing to the glowing heart of the reactor, a massive cylinder pulsing with orange light behind a cracked shield. "Gotta get in there, manual override." "You'll cook alive," she snapped, stepping in front of him. "Let me." "No chance." He cut her off, shoving past her toward the access hatch. "You don't know the systems." "I do. Stay topside. Keep Tarek's goons off me." He grabbed his toolkit, the metal clanking as he slung it over his shoulder. "Hawk," she started, but the bay doors groaned open, cutting her off. 4 Zynari guards stormed in, plasma rifles raised, their gray-blue skin glistening with sweat. Tarek's crew, no doubt, here to finish the job. "Go!" Ethan yelled, diving for the hatch. Zara didn't argue. She spun, her movements a blur of crimson fury, and charged the guards like a comet on a collision course. Ethan hit the ladder, sliding more than climbing, the heat slamming into him like a fist. The core chamber was a furnace, air shimmering, metal glowing, the roar of the reactor drowning out everything. He landed hard on the platform, knees jarring, and spotted the trigger, a sleek silver box wired into the fuel injectors, its lights blinking faster than his heartbeat. "Tarek, you slimy bastard," he muttered, ripping open his kit. Pliers, cutters, a prayer. Same old toolbox, same old stakes. Above, he heard the chaos, plasma shots sizzling, metal clanging, Zara's voice barking something fierce in Zynari. He risked a glance up through the hatch. She was a whirlwind, dodging a blast, slamming a guard's rifle into his gut, then flipping him over her shoulder like he weighed nothing. Her bodysuit gleamed with sweat, her crimson skin a stark slash against the gray uniforms. Damn, she was good. Too good. Ethan shook his head, refocusing. Eyes on the prize, Malone. The trigger was a beast, wires tangled like a nest of snakes, its core humming with enough juice to vaporize the station. He traced the lines, hands steady despite the sweat dripping into his eyes. One cut too soon, and it'd blow early. Too late, and, well, no point thinking about that. "Come on, you piece of junk," he growled, snipping a blue wire. The lights flickered, but kept ticking. Not that one. A crash echoed from above. Another guard down, probably. Zara shouted, "Hawk, hurry!" "They're not stopping." Her voice was tight, strained, and it lit a fire under him he didn't know he had. "Working on it," he yelled back, yanking a panel off the trigger. The countdown was at 30 seconds, red digits glaring like a death sentence. He found the override circuit, a tiny switch buried under a mess of connectors. There you are. His pliers slipped, slick with sweat, and he cursed, grabbing it again. 20 seconds. He flipped the switch, and the hum spiked, then dropped. The lights froze at 5 seconds. Dead. Ethan slumped against the railing, chest heaving, a shaky laugh escaping him. Humans, 1. Alien tech, 0. He'd done it again. Maybe he was more than a wrench. The ladder rattled, and Zara dropped down beside him, breathing hard. Her hair was wild, a streak of blue blood, Zynari, not hers, smeared across her cheek. "Guards are down," she said, her voice rough but steady. "Core's safe," he said, wiping his face with his sleeve. "Tarek's toys toast." She grinned, sharp and fierce, and stepped closer. "Not bad, Hawk. Not bad at all." The air between them shifted. The reactor's heat, nothing compared to the way her golden eyes locked on his. They were inches apart, her crimson skin radiating warmth, her bodysuit clinging to her like a second skin. Ethan's breath caught. He could feel her, the raw energy of her, like a live current buzzing through the space. "You're insane, you know that?" he said, voice low, rougher than he meant. Says a man who just wrestled a bomb. She shot back, her smirk softening into something else, something dangerous. Her hand rose, brushing his jaw, her touch hot and firm, sending a jolt straight through him. "You're alive. That's what counts." He didn't pull away. Couldn't. The reactor's orange glow bathed them, flickering like a heartbeat, and the world shrank to just them. Two bodies, two species, caught in a moment that shouldn't exist. His hand found her arm, sliding up to her shoulder, feeling the strength under her skin, the pulse of her against his fingertips. She leaned in, her breath grazing his lips, and it was like the station itself held its breath. Then it happened, a collision, not of flesh, but of something deeper. Under the pulsing light of the reactor, they fused, a silent explosion of heat and rhythm, two forces crashing together in a way that defied gravity, defied species. It wasn't just touch, it was a merging, a flare of energy that burned through them both, leaving the air crackling in its wake. The reactor hummed, steady now, but the real fire was here between them, a blaze that didn't need words. They pulled apart, gasping, the aftershock lingering in their eyes. Ethan's chest heaved, his mind reeling. "What the hell was that?" he rasped, half laughing, half dazed. Zara's lips curved, but her gaze was serious, almost vulnerable. "You tell me, human. Your kind are overwhelming." He ran a hand through his hair, still catching his breath. "Yeah, well, you're not exactly tame yourself." She laughed, soft and real, and for a second, the bay's wreckage faded. But reality didn't wait long. The comm unit on his belt crackled, a frantic voice cutting through. "Malone, deck officer, report. Casualties in Bay 2, auxiliary blast spread." Ethan swore, grabbing the comm on it. "Core secure. Send medics." He turned to Zara, the moment slipping away. "We're not done yet." She nodded, all business again, but her hand lingered on his arm as they climbed back up. The bay was a mess, smoke thick, alarms blaring, crew scrambling through the haze. Ethan barked orders, directing techs to seal breaches, while Zara helped drag an injured Zynari clear of a fallen beam. They worked like a unit, no words needed, and it hit him. She wasn't just chaos. She was a partner. Hours later, the bay stabilized, the worst of the damage contained. Ethan slumped against a wall, exhausted, his shirt soaked with sweat and grime. Zara slid down beside him, her crimson skin dulled by dust, her breathing heavy. "Tarek's gone quiet," she said, staring at the wrecked ceiling. "Too quiet. He'll be back," Ethan said, wiping blood from his brow. "Guys like him don't quit." She turned to him, her golden eyes searching his face. "You're right. But we stopped him today." "You stopped him." He corrected, meeting her gaze. "You took out 4 guards like it was nothing. I just fiddled with wires." Her smirk returned, faint but there. "Teamwork, then. Human and Zynari. Who'd have thought?" He chuckled, leaning his head back. "Not me. Yesterday, I was just trying to sleep. Now I'm what? Your sidekick." "More than that," she said, her voice dropping, serious again. She shifted closer, her shoulder pressing against his, and the air tightened. "Ock, there's something you need to know." He tilted his head, catching the shift in her tone. "What?" "Tarek's got a bigger bomb, stashed somewhere." "No." She took a breath, her hand resting on his knee, warm and steady. "It's about us. About this." She gestured between them, then paused, her eyes locking on his. "I'm carrying your child." Ethan froze, the words hitting him like a plasma blast. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. "A kid? His? With her?" The reactor bay spun, and all he could do was stare, the weight of it crashing down like the station itself. Ethan sat against the wrecked wall of the reactor bay, his brain short-circuiting worse than the fried auxiliary line. Zara's words, "I'm carrying your child," hung in the smoky air like a live grenade, pin pulled, ready to blow his world apart. His mouth was still open, jaw slack, but all that came out was a wheeze like a busted exhaust vent. He stared at her, her crimson skin dulled by dust, her golden eyes steady despite the chaos around them. A kid, his kid, with her, on Zithara, 9 of all places. He'd gone from fixing reactors to fathering an alien hybrid in. What a week. You're what? He finally croaked, voice scraping out like gravel. Say that again. Slower, maybe with a manual. Zara's lips twitched, a flicker of her usual smirk breaking through the tension. I'm pregnant, Hulk. You, me, us. She tapped her stomach lightly, her hand lingering there, and the reality of it hit him like a wrench to the skull. Zynari don't work like humans. Faster cycles, quicker results. That moment we had, it stuck. Ethan blinked, his mind flashing back to the reactor's glow, that unspoken collision between them. Heat, rhythm, a spark that had felt bigger than either of them. Stuck, he echoed, running a hand through his sweat-soaked hair. That's one way to put it. I thought I was just keeping you out of trouble, not starting a family. She laughed, soft and sharp, leaning her shoulder against his. Surprise, Andler. You're better at chaos than you think. Chaos, he muttered, shaking his head. Yeah, that tracks. Yesterday, I'm dodging Tarek's bombs. Today I'm what? A dad-to-be? Korrath is going to space me for this. Her expression sobered, her hand sliding to his knee, warm and firm. He won't. Not when we tell him the truth, all of it. Tarek Sabotage, the child, everything. It's bigger than us now. Ethan met her gaze, the weight of it sinking in. Bigger how? It's proof, she said, her voice low, fierce. Proof humans and Zynari aren't just allies on paper. We're connected, literally. Tarek wants us divided. This, she gestured between them. This ruins him. He let out a shaky laugh, the absurdity hitting him. So, I'm not just a wrench monkey anymore. I'm a damn symbol. Perfect. Just perfect. Get used to it, she said, standing and pulling him up. Her grip was strong, steady, and damn if it didn't ground him. Come on. We've got a mess to clean up and a warlord to face. The next few hours were a blur. Crew patching breaches, medics hauling injured techs, Ethan barking orders while Zara coordinated Zynari responders. They moved like a unit, no hesitation, and it struck him how natural it felt. But the clock was ticking. Tarek was out there, licking his wounds, and Korrath needed to know before the next strike hit. By midday, the station's central atrium buzzed with life. Humans, Zynari, Dravix, all gathered under the massive skylight, the asteroid field glinting beyond. Word had spread about the reactor blast, and rumors swirled thicker than the smoke. Ethan stood at the edge of the crowd, Zara beside him, her crimson skin a stark contrast to his grimy work gear. Korrath loomed on a raised platform, his midnight blue bulk commanding silence as he addressed the throng. The attack on Reactor Bay 3 was no accident. Korrath's voice boomed, deep and steady. We have enemies within, traitors who'd see this station burn for their own gain. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ethan felt eyes on him. Human techs, Zynari officers, all waiting for the hammer to drop. He shifted, uneasy, but Zara squeezed his arm, her touch a quiet anchor. Bring them forward, Korrath ordered, and the crowd parted. Ethan and Zara stepped up, the weight of 1,000 stairs pressing down. Tarek emerged from the sidelines, pale green skin shimmering, his silver-marked face a mask of cold fury. 2 of his guards flanked him, battered but upright, survivors from Zara's brawl. Korrath's golden eyes narrowed at Tarek. Explain yourself, son of Rax. Evidence points to your hand in this sabotage. Tarek's lips curled, a sneer barely hiding his venom. Evidence? You mean the word of a human and your wayward daughter? This is a farce, Korrath. I came to secure our future, not destroy it. Liar, Zara spat, stepping forward. Her voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. You planted surge triggers, 2 of them. One in the relay, one in the core. Hawk stopped them both. Tarek laughed, sharp and hollow. A human stopped Zynari tech? Please. He's a tool. Zara, one you've toyed with too long. Ethan's fists clenched, but he kept his cool. Tool or not, I disarmed your bombs, pal. Took me, what, 10 minutes? Guess your fancy tech ain't all it's cracked up to be. The crowd shifted, a few human techs chuckling, Zynari whispering. Tarek's sneer faltered, his skin darkening with rage. You dare. Enough, Korrath growled, silencing him. Malone's record stands. He saved the station, twice now. You, Tarek, have no proof, only accusations. Tarek straightened, his voice icy. I don't need proof when the truth is clear. Humans are a liability, weak, reckless. They don't belong in our ranks. That did it. Ethan stepped up, voice steady, loud enough to carry. Weak, huh? Reckless? Maybe. But I'm the one standing here, not running from a fight. You Zynari calculate everything. Odds, risks, power. Us humans? We don't wait for permission. We act. That's why your plan's in pieces, and I'm still breathing. A cheer rose from the human crew, ragged but real, and even some Zynari nodded. Korrath's eyes flicked to Ethan, a glint of approval there. Tarek's face twisted, but Zara wasn't done. There's more, she said, her tone commanding silence. She took Ethan's hand, pulling him beside her, and faced the crowd. Tarek wants division. Humans out, Zynari supreme. But he's too late. We're not just allies anymore. She paused, her grip tightening on Ethan's, and dropped the bomb. I'm carrying Hawk's child. Human and Zynari, together. That's the future, whether you like it or not. The atrium erupted, gasps, shouts, a roar of voices crashing together. Ethan felt the floor tilt, the weight of her words slamming into him again. He squeezed her hand back, anchoring himself as the crowd's reaction swirled. Tarek went rigid, his green skin paling, while Korrath's massive frame stiffened, his gaze snapping between them. Is this true? Korrath demanded, his voice cutting through the noise. Yes, Zara said, unflinching. And it's proof Tarek's wrong. We're stronger together. Human grit, Zynari strength. He can't stop that. Korrath stepped down, towering over them. But his expression wasn't rage. It was calculation, then resolve. A child, he rumbled, almost to himself. He turned to Tarek. You've lost, son of Rax. Your sabotage failed. Your betrothal's void. Leave my station now. Tarek's eyes blazed, his hands curling into fists. You think a half-breed will save you? You're blind, all of you. He spat the words, but the guards closed in, Korrath's silent command clear. The crowd parted as Tarek was escorted out, his silver-marked face a mask of defeat, no threats left to hurl. The door sealed behind him with a final hiss, cutting off his presence like a snipped wire. The atrium buzzed, humans clapping Ethan's back, Zynari murmuring about the child. A new era dawning. Korrath turned to Ethan, his massive hand clapping down on his shoulder, firm but not crushing. You've earned your place, Malone. Both of you. Ethan managed a grin, the chaos in his head settling into something like pride. Guess I'm not just a wrench monkey anymore. More than that, Korrath said, his voice a low rumble. You've given us something bigger than reactors to fix. Don't screw it up. No promises, Ethan quipped, but his eyes slid to Zara, who smirked beside him, her hand slipping into his. Her crimson warmth pressed against his palm, a quiet promise in the noise. The crowd dispersed, Korrath's orders ringing out to secure the station, but Ethan lingered, Zara at his side. The skylight above framed the asteroid field, jagged, wild but steady now, like the station itself. Sometimes, he said, half to himself, half to her, trouble's just the start of something better. She leaned into him, her shoulder fitting against his like it belonged there. Ours, she said, her voice soft but sure. And damn if that didn't feel like a win. One worth every busted pipe and bomb he'd faced.